Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Balanced Scorecard Institute webinar called OKRs, what they are, and why so many organizations have them. This is a series. I know many of you know that we do a regular basics of webinars on all the frameworks that we work with, whether it's Balanced Scorecard or OKRs or KPIs or strategy execution, some of the other things that we're working on. So this is a series. We help people with the basics of how to implement these methodologies in their organizations. In this case, we're going to talk about OKRs, why they've become so popular in recent years, and what is it that organizations are trying to accomplish with them. I am David Wilsey. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for Balanced Scorecard Institute. I've been doing Balanced Scorecard or KPI or OKR kind of implementations with organizations for 17, 18 years now, something like that. So I'm coming to you from our headquarters in Cary, North Carolina in the US. We do these also as a way of promoting our programs, our certification programs. We do have an OKR professional certification program that we offer in partnership with the George Washington University Center for Excellence in Public Leadership. We offer that on a pretty regular basis, and so this is a way for you to get to know what OKRs are, to know if you might be interested in something like that. Now, I said OKRs are gaining in popularity. It seems like if you are interested in management and you're online reading about management, it seems like you can't get away from it. It seems like OKRs are everywhere. We have Balanced Scorecard clients, longtime clients calling me and saying, "Hey, look at what Bill Gates is doing. What is Bono doing with this OKR thing?" John Doerr is everywhere talking about OKRs, and we hear lots of stories about Google, and we Forbes is talking about it. And anyway, there are just, everybody seems to be talking about OKRs and how it's useful to get your team to be focusing on creating and implementing goals on a regular basis, and managing towards goals, and using this framework to improve performance in the organization and create alignment. Okay, so essentially, since John Doerr, right here in the middle, since he wrote about his use of OKRs with Google and the success that Google has had, this framework seems to be taken off. And a lot of times people think of OKRs, they think of the tech world, they think of technology, because it does seem like most software companies these days are using OKRs. My observation has been that it is now expanding way beyond that. You see governments using them, you see nonprofits using them, you see traditional manufacturing organizations, businesses using OKRs, because it's a simple framework for identifying what you're trying to accomplish, and making things better. So what do we mean by an OKR? OKR stands for Objectives and Key Results. It's a popular goal-setting framework. People use it to set goals, track progress, align action with your strategy, and achieve results. Get people on the same page, keep people on track. A lot of people give credit to Andy Grove at Intel for creating the OKR model. I think it's a little more complicated than that. I think it actually evolved from the MBO, the Management by Objectives model that Peter Drucker came up with in the 1950s. There's been a lot of variations on that MBO model, whether you're talking about SMART goals, or nowadays they talk about optimal MBO, and then there's KPIs and Balanced Scorecard, and there's all kinds of frameworks that are loosely trying to accomplish the same thing. So it's a little more complicated, but Andy Grove does get a lot of credit for coming up with the OKR phrase, and the OKR, the way it's being implemented more these days. So why is it that organizations are implementing this system? What are you trying to get out of it? The first thing is strategic focus. Okay, if you're a startup and you've got a million things to do, it is helpful to get your team in a room and say, here are the simple priority goals that we're trying to achieve. Let's all align around these simple things. If you're you don't have to be a startup. If you're a multi-million dollar, 3,000 employee company, it's still useful to be able to say, what are our priorities? What goals are we trying to achieve? What objectives are we trying to achieve? How are we going to measure success? Can I get my team to focus on the most important things instead of trying to do everything for everybody? If I can create that focus, I can also create alignment. I can make sure that I don't have 3 different teams all going in different directions because they all have a different understanding of what you're trying to achieve. If I can create some desired outcomes and make sure that I'm sharing that in a transparent way, everybody can align their own activities with those desired outcomes. There's been a lot of talk about how OKRs enable agility. In other words, we have the sort of the traditional way of doing planning, where you talk about goals and strategies that you're going to implement, and we have this 5-year plan, and we implement that over time. The use of OKRs has enabled people to think of planning as more of a quarterly activity, where we identify our goals and we try to get something done, and we reevaluate on a regular basis, which enables us to act in a more agile fashion and implement strategy the way you might an agile software development kind of approach. It enables employees to be more innovative because you're giving them the autonomy to set their own goals and get things done on their own. Which leads to the accountability question. If I'm on a regular basis in a disciplined fashion, revisiting our goals and determining whether we're actually getting something done, it creates a culture of accountability that's useful even beyond the goal setting element. Okay, so these are the primary reasons why you would want to implement a system like OKR. One of the beauties of OKR is the simplicity. Essentially, there's 2 parts. You've got objectives. Objectives qualitatively describe what you're trying to accomplish. It's the high level outcome you're trying to achieve. And then you've got the key results. The key results quantifiably capture what you intend to accomplish. In other words, how are we going to know whether we're successful or not in a quantifiable sense? Are we counting something that will indicate that we're successful? A couple of simple examples I always use: we want to improve the customer experience, and we're using our net promoter score. And I've determined that by the end of the quarter, we can improve that by 5%. And so that's my goal, my objective plus my key result. I might also be talking about healthcare market share. That's what our organization is aiming for. And we want to see a 10% increase in healthcare vertical sales by the end of the quarter. Very simple, very easy to understand, very easy to align with. I can align all my activities and initiatives with these, with this OKR. John Doerr, in his book Measure But What Matters, has a very simple formula for how you create this, create OKRs. OKRs should be developed with a simple formula of I will objective as measured by key results. It's as simple as that. You can give that language to your employees, your small teams as they're developing them, and use that as guidance. My experience is that people do need a little bit more help than that. It's they will wrestle with it if you don't give them a little bit more understanding of what good looks like. So we always like to talk about our characteristics of good, whichever framework we're talking about. So good objectives are qualitative, meaning they're you're not necessarily talking about just the specific act. They're a description of what success looks like. They tend to be lofty and ambitious, and yet simple and easy to understand. Okay, they should be audacious if possible. In other words, poetically inspired. I put if reasonably possible because if you're Bono and you're trying to change the world, you might come up with a poetically inspiring, audacious goal for fixing things. If I'm working with a team of bank tellers, I might not necessarily be trying to change the world with what the bank tellers are. So they still want to articulate goals. They still want to inspire continuous improvement and get better at things, but they might not necessarily have the most poetically inspiring goal written for that team. So in that case, we're always talking about using continuous improvement language. You're inspiring something you can trend over time, something that we can get better at, something that means that we're actually changing the state of something as opposed to something that's more task oriented. Should be valuable to the organization and strategically aligned. We're not usually talking about an action or a project, and this is something that people will really wrestle with. Employees I've observed, they're used to saying, "What am I going to get done? My goal is to redesign the website by the end of the quarter. My goal is to implement this new marketing campaign." Usually, what you're aiming for with the objective is the higher level outcome. What is the purpose of that website? Is it to increase sales? Is it to increase communication? What is the purpose of that marketing campaign? Is it to increase brand awareness? There's usually a higher level purpose, and that's what you capture in your objective. Good key results, quantitative. I am counting something. If there's not a number in it, then it's not a key result. It should be achievable in a quarter or whatever period that you might not use the quarters. Some people have three periods per year. Some people only use one and an annual period. Whatever period you're talking about is what you're typically talking about in terms of setting a goal. But quarterly is a very common pattern used. That should be something that's controllable by the team. It might be something that you can influence, but ultimately you want to make sure it's not just completely unrelated to what the team or individual is doing. It should be pretty obvious how the key result ties to the objective. If a reasonable person can't see the connection, then you've probably chosen the wrong key result. And again, ideally, this is a little more squishy. Ideally, your key results should not be on actions or projects. It should be an outcome you're measuring that's again something you can trend. I say ideally because I work with a lot of teams, and yes, sometimes, especially when you're launching something new, or if you're focusing on something for the first time, sometimes just getting something done is going to be the key result that you're going to measure, and that is okay. Sometimes we don't sweat it too much if sometimes you end up with a milestone type key result. So it would look like this. You have different teams in the organization, all focusing on different things. At the chief executive level, they're focusing on profits. They've got a particular key result targets by the end of the quarter. In the operating area, we're talking about service quality, and they're focusing on defects. Notice the key results are always measurable, and notice that all of these are have a target of completion by the end of a particular time period. In this case, quarter number 2. In customer service, we're focusing on the customer experience, and we're using a net promoter score as our measurement. And human capital, we're talking about knowledge and skills, and looks like we're doing some training. We want to get everybody trained, and we're going to give them an exam, and we're looking for an increase in exam scores. In marketing, we're talking about web presence, and we've got key results that we're aiming for there related to web traffic. So everybody has their focus area that they're worried about. They have their own objectives. They have their own key results. Okay, and you could do this at the employee level. We've sort of, over the last 4 or 5 years, I've noticed a change in that used to be in the OKR world. You saw a lot of focus on trying to get all employees to do this at the individual level. And over the years, we've found that that's quite challenging. It's probably better to start at the team level, and let's make sure that the teams are creating alignment and creating objectives and key results that are really solid before we get to having all employees doing this at the individual level. That's one convention that's still emerging. There's a lot of other conventions that you see in the OKR world. You hear a lot of people talking about the difference between committed OKRs as opposed to aspirational OKRs. In other words, if usually I have a small team and we're trying to decide, what we're going to get done in the next quarter. A committed OKR says we are going to get that done. We are going to. I am telling the team that we are going to meet with 10 new customers this next quarter. It's something I control, and we are going to get that done. My aspirational goal might be to make sales to 5 of them. we're going to meet with 10. I'm going to commit to meeting with 10. My goal is to sell something to 5 of them. And I can't really control that sales element. So I'm going to think of that as more aspirational. That's just an example of what I mean by something that's aspirational as opposed to committed. And on the aspirational level, usually you see an organization achieving 60 to 70% of those, because you want people to be implementing stretch goals. You want them to be reaching for the stars, but you don't want it to be unrealistic either. So often there's a time period where you're either hitting 0% of them, or you're hitting 100% of them, because you haven't quite fine-tuned that target setting exercise yet. It's convention to share them transparently. This is a little different for a lot of organizations. You report them on a regular cadence. It's very useful to be able to before I go sit in a meeting with the chief operating officer, to know what that chief operating officer is focusing on, what they're trying to accomplish this quarter, and how they've done in the past. That is a very useful exercise. And when we do balanced scorecards, we tend to do this exercise called cascading, where you work your way top down. You develop objectives at the organization level, and then you cascade them down throughout the organization. Most OKR coaches frown on that because they think it's too slow. It's too slow for in the agile world to be able to wait. I can't wait. If I'm in a third layer down, I can't wait to develop my OKRs until they're done higher up. The world changes too fast for that. And so in the OKR world, we tend to talk about creating bi-directional alignment by creating them at all levels all at the same time. And over time, we can adapt. If there's some misalignment, if the customer service team seems to be misaligned with the operations team, that will fix itself over time. So, and then you do reset them every period. If you're on a quarterly schedule, then every quarter you reset them based on new strategic developments. How has our environment changed? How has the world changed? Has COVID suddenly changed our world and we're now all working from home? Then maybe our strategy needs to adapt right then on the fly. That's the way that works. One of the most challenging things that we have to wrestle with especially with our client base, is that a lot of them have KPIs, and it's very hard to explain the difference between KPIs and OKRs because they are so similar. I think I heard Paul Niven say balanced scorecard KPIs. It's all made up of the same DNA. The intentions are the same. For us, KPIs are more ongoing. These are measurements that we have ongoing that are indicative of high level goals we're trying to achieve. And maybe in the example on the screen, I've got web visits, and I've got the newsletter sign up rate. We track that every single month, month in and month out. This organization does. So those are KPIs, and they're indicators that are useful for showing us stories like this. It's like, wow, looking at this story, I can see that our web traffic has declined and our newsletter sign up has declined. And so we need to do something about it. So in the OKR world, we talk about what are we going to get done this quarter? What goals can I set for this quarter? So with an OKR, I can say my objective is to increase website effectiveness. And we've got some key results here on about moving the needle from 95 to, it looks like I'm at 95. It looks like I want to be up here almost to the blue, 145 per month by the end of the quarter. And I want to increase newsletter signups from 32 to about 45 per month by the end of the quarter. And so I track my progress. The scoring for OKRs is sort of a yes/no question on a scale of 0 to 1 or 0 up to 100%. Tracking whether or not we have achieved that particular key result. And so I can do the math between all of my key results and give myself an overall score of whether or not I am achieving my OKRs. So I think of KPIs as more long-term, continuous, and I think of OKRs as short-term. What am I going to get done this particular period? What goals am I setting for myself in this particular period? And I can already see some of the questions coming in about this, the difference between the different models. So, it's not easy. In this webinar is going to focus on OKRs, and I'll talk a little bit later about using the frameworks together. Okay, so if that's what OKR is about, what are the keys to success? We've been using this framework now for 4 or 5, maybe 6 or 7 years now, since it started gaining popularity, and we've observed a lot of challenges with this framework. The one is that it seems like a lot of coaches out there are implementing OKR without really a disciplined process. There's almost a free-for-all, encouraged almost. Just go set your 300 employees free, tell them to go develop OKRs. And we've found that you really need a disciplined process. It's really important that if you have, software programmers sitting next to each other and they're developing OKRs, if one of them is trying to, promote world peace, they're way up here, and the other person is developing a to-do list with 67 items on it because they're putting everything that's important on it. They're both calling those OKRs. It creates a huge mess. It's very, very confusing. They're not really talking to each other. And so we like to use this framework, this very disciplined process for implementing it, to make sure that everybody's doing roughly the same thing. They're making sure that they're doing all of the right things at the front end. They're articulating intent, strategic intent. They're using the language the same way. They're drafting OKRs the same way. They're aligning them the same way. And then we have this quarterly process where we go through, where we share them and align. We finalize them. We review status about halfway through the quarter, and then we score and learn. And we essentially have a chance to adapt and improve them over time. You adapt. You're either adapting the OKRs and going right back into the cycle, or sometimes you have to go back and adapt your strategy. The point is that you want to use a disciplined process. It's critical to keeping this from turning into something that's very, very chaotic. Okay, so inconsistency can lead to chaos. That's one of the pitfalls that we're trying to avoid. Another pitfall you're trying to avoid is letting people create OKRs that are impossible. It's and there might be a calibration that happens over time. At first, people create impossible OKRs because they just don't know better, and over time they'll learn to slowly adapt the key results to where they're more achievable. But your team can get very frustrated if they're told to be ambitious and they get carried away with that. We've seen some alignment issues. If you go out and you read about OKR and you learn that, Google maybe back in the day used to implement this in more of a free-for-all fashion and to create bottom-up alignment. But if you don't have something, a strategy defined at the organization level, people will create a mess that lacks the alignment that you're actually aiming for. You do want to provide some guidance. And similarly, how are these different objectives related to each other can be a mess as well. We actually still have sort of a top-down approach in that we try to define objectives at the organization level so that people can align with those, and so we try to coach them on creating that alignment between the objectives. Another problem sometimes, again, if you don't provide enough guidance, people will create vague OKRs. I was listening to one person talk the other day about one of their bosses said, we should just have one that's called quality, just quality. Quality is our OKR. And there was no more definition to it than that. And so, but people didn't know what exactly did that mean. What did that mean for them, for each individual team? It was too vague. It did not provide enough guidance as to what in concrete terms, what kind of intended result are we aiming for? Again, if you don't provide enough guidance, too many OKRs. It's an inevitable outcome of this. Go forth and create OKRs, and people create a long laundry list of things that they're going to try to achieve. Minimal focusing on as probably, if you want to make a mistake, err on the side of too few. Christina Watke has a book about focusing on just one. I'll talk a little bit more about her book in a second. Have one if you need. That's better than having too many. Keep things simple. Not enough follow-up or regular review. We all get busy. We create our OKRs in January, and then by the end of the quarter comes and goes, and nobody remembers to to do any kind of review or follow up. That can be really frustrating for the employees that are putting the work into getting it done. And I've already touched on this a few times. There's a lot of to-do lists that get created in the OKR world, and then having almost all of your OKRs focus on milestones or deliverables or actions, that's not really what we're aiming for either. We're really trying to get, if anything, you want most or all of them, if possible, to focus on outcomes. What outcomes are we really trying to achieve? Am I actually changing our performance, the state of something? That's what we're aiming for, something measurable in a trendable kind of sense. Another trap, I think, pitfall, to use the phrase on the slide, is to try to use this for employee compensation. And I've found over and over and over that creates a lot of frustration for people. Like, it can have a negative effect on morale, as it says on the slide. It encourages gaming. Once I know that my pay raise is based on this, I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that the numbers come out in my favor, regardless of whether it's good for the organization or not. I mean, not everybody will do that, but enough people will that it's a problem. So we have found that OKRs or KPIs or balanced scorecard, any of these frameworks are much more useful in creating strategic focus and improving performance at the organization level than they are as the foundation for compensation. That's a very advanced OKR implementation. I'm not even sure that you should probably even go down that route. Doing this well means that you're good at articulating strategic intent before you start. We have a lot of people call and say, we implemented OKRs and it seems to be kind of a mess. We're not sure why it didn't work. And when I start quizzing them, usually the problem is they didn't articulate strategic intent very well, if at all. And we're talking about having a mission statement, a vision statement, a coherent strategy that's articulated in some framework or another. It doesn't have to be balanced scorecard or one of the ones that we recommend. Any framework, as long as it's organized and it's coherent, it's obvious how the dots connect. And then you go about creating objectives at the organization level, hopefully key results at the organization level, and then OKRs at other levels. And then actions should follow that pattern. So your actions are designed to achieve objectives. When I have that call and people are wrestling with their OKRs, a lot of times it's because they didn't create anything at the organization level. Again, they probably went on Google and they looked up they did some research on OKRs, and they saw a lot of people talking about just telling your employees to go forth and create 300, create objective OKRs at the employee level. But they failed at the step where you give them something to align to. Employees want to align with a shared vision. They want to align with the strategy of the organization. They want to know that the work that they're doing is contributing to the bigger picture. Why? That why question that we always hear in the management world. So give them something to align with. Give them a disciplined process so that they know they're following the same procedures as everybody else, and then give them objectives. Now, we at the Balanced Scorecard Institute use a strategy map. That's a balanced scorecard tool. But these ovals on the strategy map are objectives. They're objectives just like the objectives in an OKR system. So if rather than just tell people go create objectives and key results without any context, if you give them this picture, they say, hey, yes, I can contribute to process efficiency. I can contribute to lowering the wait time. That seems to be an important part of our strategy. Now I have context that enables me to create my own OKRs or my small team's OKRs that make sense within a coherent system, and that's really valuable for employees. So I said I would come back to using these frameworks together, And that's what we mean by it. And so you have at the organization level, you have objectives that are organized in a cause and effect manner. And if you're not familiar with balanced scorecard, we have a lot of webinars that you can watch. But the basic principle is that I want to be able to take my objectives and tell a story about how they relate to each other and how they fit within a coherent system that helps me articulate what we're trying to accomplish. So I do that at the organization level, and then if needed, I could do that at a department level. And when I say if needed, I mean if you have strategically autonomous units. In other words, it might be a large organization, and you might have departments that are essentially organizations themselves. We worked with a medical university, and they had the hospital, and they had the university itself, the school. They were very different organizations. They were autonomous. They needed their own strategy within each unit for them to help keep their teams on the same page. And then once you have those organization level strategies articulated in one format or another, then you can create OKRs at the shared level, at the team level, or the personal level, if you want to go that direction. Okay, so the framework, the balanced scorecard framework, is great for articulating high level strategy, and OKRs are great for short-term accountability, getting things done, making sure that we don't let things just sort of get stale. Sometimes in the balanced scorecard world, we create it and we set it and forget it. That's the thing that one of the dangers, one of the pitfalls with balanced scorecard. OKR, one of the pitfalls is we don't have that high level alignment. So you can use them together to take advantage of the strengths of each tool. One of the things that I'm trying to encourage with any of these frameworks is to make sure that employees understand and focus on the drivers of success. In other words, that's that leading and lagging concept. I have leading indicators that are predictive of success, and I have lagging indicators that are indicators of that we've achieved the results that we're trying to achieve. And so when I'm developing OKRs, or I'm getting my teams to build them, I'm trying to get them to think about how the things we do are driving the outcomes we're trying to achieve. So as an organization, we're ultimately trying to reduce cancer rates, and our piece of cancer rates is the population that smokes. So we track that. And maybe I am responsible for smoking cessation programs, and I want to understand that connection between the number of programs we hold and that population that smokes. And so as I'm implementing OKRs, I'm trying to get employees to articulate this. And you'd be surprised, you might be surprised at how often employees, they might, maybe they instinctively understand it, but they don't articulate it very well. And so making them go through this exercise and actually say it and create consensus around this connection can be really useful. So that's one of the keys to success, is encouraging this kind of thinking. I've also found that when you're implementing OKRs, a lot of very smart people do not know how to articulate a desired outcome. It's just in their DNA. We're just all accustomed to listing out the things that we're going to get done. What are the tasks that I'm going to get done? And so we're literally training them to think about outcomes and define outcomes and articulate outcomes. So there's a teaching benefit to implementing implementing OKR, the OKR system, in that you're teaching a lot of these people how to do this better. You're also teaching them how to differentiate between action and desired results. In other words, we literally train people in our classes that the language matters, that the terminology you use. There's a lot of verbs, to put it in semantic terms, lots of verbs that imply activity or tasks or actions. All these words that imply start and stop, write, create, develop, design. they all are designed or written in a way that imply that I'm going to be done at some point. Okay, so anytime we use a verb like that, we're talking about an action, probably, whether it's a simple activity or is it a project, which is a little bit more complicated, coordinated set of actions designed to create a particular deliverable, or even maybe it's a strategic initiative. It's still a set of actions that are designed to have strategic impact. Those are usually anything that falls into the action category is not necessarily the outcome we're trying to achieve. So what we try to coach people to do is whatever that activity is you've identified, redesign the e-commerce page. Great idea. Great. Let's put that in the action category. But what is the higher level outcome we're trying to achieve? What is the objective? We're trying to improve web conversion, maybe. And what is the measurement? What is the key result? We want a 20% increase in web sales by the end of the first quarter. So there is value in coaching your employees in this differentiation between the action you're going to implement and the outcome you're trying to achieve in a measurable sense and in an objective sense. We're also talking about creating strategic agility. And this is another thing that is useful in a training sense, because so many of our employees are used to the old way of thinking about strategy, where you develop a strategic plan, it's 5 years, and you don't have to worry about it. Once you have that retreat and that you're done, you don't have to worry about it. What you're trying to encourage is the thinking here that Jeff Bezos is getting at. If you're good at course correcting, being wrong is less costly than you think, whereas being slow is going to be expensive for sure. You want employees to be adapting on the fly. If things change, it's okay that we tried something and it didn't work. We're going to try something new and it doesn't work. That is okay. This gets us to a place of strategic agility, which we think of as the ability to detect and quickly adapt to unforeseen changes in your organization's strategic environment. Okay, so how do OKRs help you with that? They help you because you have a shorter update cycle. Okay, every quarter we're going to come back and revisit this. You don't have to wait 5 years until the data on your strategic plan gets there to know whether you're making a difference or not. It emphasizes getting something done. We're not going to wait for 3 years for the alignment structure to be put in place. We're going to start working on OKRs today. So I don't have to wait. It emphasizes that achievement, the action, not creating the structure. I can create them on the fly. If I have a temporary team that gets together, they now have a structure to say, okay, we have this temporary team. We're trying to redesign something. What is the OKR? What are we trying to achieve with this team? And I don't have to have a strategy management office come in and facilitate. We can create OKRs on the fly, get better at collaboration, better at shared responsibility, and so forth. And ultimately, I'm improving communications, improving my understanding of what everybody's working on, and so forth. And then finally, I can make sure that people are getting something done. And I told you I'd come back to Christina Wadke's book, Radical Focus. It's a fantastic book for anybody who's interested in OKRs. I'd recommend it to anybody. It's written in a novel format, so it's like reading a story about a company that's implementing OKRs. She's got this simple tool that she uses. She's going to have one objective that doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. A few key results. So she lists them up here in the top right. Simple 2x2 matrix. She's got some health metrics. We call those KPIs, but they're just metrics that we track on a regular basis. They're not necessarily what we're going to achieve this quarter. And then she, on a weekly basis, she has a meeting where she talks about priorities and then what's coming. So you're not going to be surprised by anything. So here's another example. Here's an example we created for a marketing team. They're trying to improve marketing and they've got some store traffic and online orders and so forth. Key results. She's got these confidence levels that she uses and she adapts every single time they meet. They change the confidence level. Are we going to achieve it or not? One of the goals here is to never be surprised. We always know where we stand, and If a month and a half in, we're still at 0 or 1 or 2 on our confidence level, we know maybe we need to move some resources around, or maybe we just know that that's probably not going to happen like we expected. We've got some health KPIs that we track on a regular basis: Net Promoter Score, employee satisfaction. And then we get together this week, and our priorities right this week is to finish the new ad copy and so forth. And then the team, well, what's coming next? In the next few weeks, we're going to be focusing here. So it's a simple little tool that you can use to manage your teams, keep them on track, keep them focused on getting the right things done. Then the last message I will leave with you is that what I've found is that a lot of people come into the training and they think, we are down here, we're just getting started. I don't know anything about OKRs, and I'm going to take this class, and the goal is that OKRs are all going to be outcome focused, aligned, measurable, and not perfectly and perfectly implemented. And then a few months later, maybe a year later, maybe 2 years later, they find that, okay, the reality is a lot of our OKRs are still milestone focused. They're misaligned. We still have haphazard implementation here and there. What's the problem? And what I always tell people is that just recognize that there's value in getting people to do this activity, even if it's not perfect. Don't expect it to be perfect. If you can get your employees to set goals, it will make a huge difference in their focus. So don't worry about it being perfect. If they're setting goals, even if the goals are all milestone focused, at least they're thinking about what they're trying to achieve, and they're communicating with each other about what they're trying to achieve. They're communicating expectations, they're setting deadlines, they're managing towards their deadlines. If they miss some of the deadlines or most of them, that's okay for a while. The fact that they are using deadlines it makes a huge difference. Between what it probably looked like before that, where people were just sort of managing in an ad hoc fashion. Are they creating a culture of sharing and transparency? If you can encourage this, it will make a big difference. A culture of accountability. Do people feel like if they said they're going to hit a deadline, they're going to work towards that deadline, and do they follow up or not? And then celebrate incremental success. If you're making some progress, make sure that people are recognized for that. All right, so if you'd like to know more, we do offer a professional certification program in OKR. We offer this in partnership with the Center for Excellence in Public Leadership at George Washington University. We also, if you want to know more about balanced scorecard or KPIs, we have programs in those areas as well. And then if we have a few clients that come to us and they say, we thought about it, we decided we don't really want to go down the training route. What we would really, because we don't really have the internal resources, what we'd like to do is have somebody come help. We do offer consulting services, for all of our systems. We come in and facilitate the process of developing OKRs in this case. All right, so how are we doing on time? It's 10:44. We have a couple minutes for questions. I'm looking at the list of questions. If you use the Q&A, button on your menu, I'm seeing more questions about the difference between balanced scorecard, between KPIs essentially and OKRs. Again, KPIs are more continuous. We track them continuously. OKRs track what we're going to get done this quarter. I always use the metaphor of it's like the difference between a stove and a grill and a microwave. We have 3 different tools. They're all designed to do roughly the same thing. They're very similar. The mechanics are a little different. And if you're a good cook, you know when to use a grill and when to use the stove. OKRs and KPIs are very much like that. They're sort of the same. They're intended to achieve the same thing, but in the KPI world, they tend to be more continuous, and in the OKR world, it tends to be what am I going to get done this quarter? And in the OKRs tend to be scored based on yes or no. Did I get it done or not? On a scale of 0 to 100 up to 100%, did I get done what I said we were going to get done? I wish there wasn't so much overlap between the frameworks. It's very frustrating in our field because it can be very confusing. I see some questions about using them together as well. Can we use the systems together? And well, we tend to, most of the clients I work with tend to choose one or the other. You can use them together. You can use balanced scorecard or KPIs for long-term objectives, and you can use OKRs for that short-term strategy execution. Essentially, every quarter we talk about what objectives we're going to achieve. But there's a risk if you've got two frameworks at the same time. There can be some confusion. This question of what are the difference between the two. I don't work in this space. It's hard for a lot of people to get their arms around it. So what I've found is that if you choose one or the other, you can still learn. We've got a balanced scorecard, and I'm going to learn all the benefits of OKRs, of implementing it on a quarterly basis. And so that means I have a quarterly cadence where I talk about my balanced scorecard objectives, and I talk about my measurements, and we adapt on the fly, and we do all the things that an OKR company does, but we're using balanced scorecard. Or I'm an OKR company. We have OKRs, and at the organization level, we do organization level OKRs. We think about cause and effect. They're OKRs, but it looks an awful lot like balanced scorecard. It has all the same pieces, all the benefits that we would have gotten. We just call it OKRs for the sake of keeping it simple. I think that's usually the better solution. All right, I see a couple more questions about the program. The training program is a 3-day class. It's all of our classes are experiential. In other words, we have some lecture, and then we do exercises. We do some case study work. You will learn how to implement OKRs, and you'll spend 3 days talking about these challenges that you're going to run into. All the things that I talked about briefly. You really get to flesh that out. There's always questions about the slides. What we do is we share the recording. So with the recording, it's Christmas time, and it's a holiday time, and so people are out. We will probably have the recording, I'm guessing, early next week, available for everybody. Couple questions about using them. Are they available online? Yeah, the courses are usually offered online these days. We will probably be offering them in person very soon. Our balanced scorecard and KPI classes are now back in person, but we still offer all the classes online. The achievement of measurement of satisfaction is 65 to 70%. Is that right? That's getting at that. How do I know whether my key result targets, the embedded targets, are aggressive enough? Or am I stretching the organization enough? If I'm hitting 100% of my OKRs, it probably means I'm not really being aggressive enough. I'm not stretching enough, and so that's why there's that conventional wisdom now in the OKR world that we're only going to hit 60 to 70% of them, because that indicates that we're stretching, but it also indicates that we're somewhat realistic about it. Questions about the individual versus the team. OKRs, if you go back 5 years, maybe, you saw the research about our OKRs, you would see a lot of recommendations to develop them at the individual level. I think I talked about this quite a bit in the slides. At the individual level, the challenge there, and to me, the biggest weakness with OKR is that if you try to implement it at the individual level, that means I'm going to go to 300 employees and say, go create your own OKRs. And most people don't know what to do. They just have no clue. And if I'm doing this only at the executive team level, I can have a champion or a coach who is finessing and filtering and making sure that everything is coherent and makes sense and is consistent, and I can coach teams. But if I have 300 employees all creating OKRs, it tends to be a mess. Most employees don't know what to do. It's much more challenging at the individual level than if you have teams. So I would start higher up, make sure that the teams are doing this well, and then slowly work your way down, and to the point where it becomes, make sure that it's always practical, it's always useful. If you get too low, you'll know it. All of a sudden, it starts. People don't know what their OKRs are. It means you've gone too far down into the organization. Lots of questions about different types of organizations. Can we use this in different? I mean, I know this is associated with the technology world, but any type of organization, I haven't found an organization yet that doesn't get some value from saying, here is what I'm trying to accomplish, and here is how I measure success. It doesn't matter what kind of organization it is, you will get benefit from doing that. Does the key result need to measure the entire objective? Do key results have to cover all aspects of the objective, or just some to focus on this quarter? In other words, can the key result change from quarter to quarter to achieve the same objective? I mean, you're really getting into the weeds. Yes, you can. You're not going to ever have a perfect set of key results. Maybe long-term, what you'll do, if you have long-term objectives, you'll have an objective that's high up in the organization. You'll have 4 or 5 different key results to capture different elements of that objective. There's oftentimes a multifaceted set of elements that indicate whether you're achieving your objective or not. But when you're talking about something you're going to get done this quarter, focus is really important. So you'll say, well, we have this objective. I'm trying to improve the customer experience. What can I tackle this quarter? Well, we're going to improve the interface, and so we want to see the satisfaction with that interface go up by 20%. If you have too many of those things, you're probably trying to do too many things at the same time. More questions about the training sessions, whether they're recorded. They are not self-paced. These are live online classes. So far, we are talking about developing some self-paced programs, but we feel like it's much more effective to be working with a live person. You get to ask questions and answer questions and have a discussion with your team. We just feel like it's much more effective to have in-person or live online programs, so that you can get those questions answered. Are there tools? I a couple of questions about software. I intentionally didn't talk about software. There are tons of software tools designed to help you with OKRs. We have not yet found one perfect tool yet. If you want to reach out to me, I'd love to schedule a call if anybody wants to talk through some of the challenges of the various tools. But it is definitely useful to have a software, an automation tool to enable this. If you're trying to track your OKRs in an Excel or something, that can create a mess. It's really hard to keep up with. So we definitely recommend that you use some sort of a tool. On the balanced scorecard side or KPI side, we use QuickScore to Spider Strategies. Or actually, it's called Spider Impact. Sorry, it's a great tool for tracking metrics, and you can use it for OKRs, but it's a dedicated KPI tool. It's not specific it's not specifically designed for OKRs. I see a question about change management. Where does it fit in this framework? And that is a great question. For us, all these frameworks are really about change as much as they are about performance. You're trying to get people to do something different, and measurement is an important element in that. But your approach to implementation should include principles of change management, whether you're doing, again, balanced scorecard, KPIs, or OKRs. We come into it with a very specific, intentional workshop-based approach to where we get people involved in the development of every element so that they can work through this themselves. The worst thing that you can do is have one smart person, the champion, the CEO, somebody go off in a corner and create all your OKRs for you and come back and just say, go forth and do it. It just doesn't work. People do not embrace it that way. So this is really a change management exercise. It's about communication. It's about making sure that people understand what's in it for them. It's making sure that they're included in the conversation as to what you're trying to accomplish. So, as if you're going to be an OKR coach, your job is really to facilitate. It doesn't matter that you're good at this. It matters that they understand what this is about. And so you're really facilitating them through the process of developing their objectives and developing their measures. And I mean, I've seen CEOs try to do this themselves. And one guy got very frustrated because he brought us in later, and he got mad because they were coming up with the same measures that they had rejected when he had done it himself. But I mean, we told them that, they are now wrestling with it themselves. They're coming up with the measures that make the most sense to them now that they're looking at all the options. And of course they're coming up with a lot of the same things that you did. But the difference is, before you were just presenting it to them as if that was the right answer, and now they're working through it themselves. All right, it looks like we're about out of time. Again, I there's always 3,000 questions when we do these webinars. If I didn't get to your question, I'd be happy to schedule a call or just send me an email. I don't think my email, just on our website, you can reach out to us at balancescorecard.org, hit the contact us button, and they'll send it on to me. And I'm happy to reach out to anybody and talk through the issues that you might be wrestling with. Otherwise, thank you very much for attending. I greatly appreciate it. I hope everybody has a great holiday season, and I will see you next time.